Help keep Kinks and Beats Daily ad-free and receive bonus content early with a contribution of 20 cents per episode. Visit herohabit.com/shop for more information. Welcome to Kinks and Beats Daily. I'm your host, Tony Fry. Thank you for downloading, as always. I mentioned this on the last couple episodes, but since I don't know that all of you listen to every episode or in order, we are on episode 94. This is episode 94, and we are closing in on 100 episodes already. We've done since October what it takes some podcasts 2 or 3 years to do. This daily thing, it's been fun. I'm glad we're doing it together and you're enjoying it, and I like all the feedback. But I didn't think it would get to 100 episodes, that's for sure. But to get towards 100, I want the podcast to chart in the top 10 on iTunes. We've cracked the top 20 a few times, but I want the top 10. And the way we do that is by reviews and ratings from you guys and new subscribers. So if all of you who have already subscribed are downloading it, it doesn't help. If I get 1,000 downloads of this episode today, it doesn't really help my chart position, but if as much as 5 new subscribers would. So what I'm asking from you is if you could share a link to this podcast on your social media, if you belong to certain Kinks or Beatles related Facebook groups, things like that, share a link to this podcast, tag Hero Habit in it, at Hero Habit, and one person that does that, I will pick at random, and they'll get a cool little Kinks and Beatles prize pack sent to them. So help me do that. Today we are talking about arguably the first great British rock and roll song to really hit in America. I Saw Her Standing There. Pure rock and roll. Released March 22nd, 1963 on their Please Please Me album, and it was released as a B-side in the United States, the B-side to I Want to Hold Your Hand on December 26, 1963, so several months later. The song peaked at number 14 on the American charts as a B-side. I mean, how many bands in history had B-sides in the top 20? And to not even release it as a single in the UK. It was recorded in one session on February 11th, 1963. Now, this session is a bit legendary because they recorded the entirety of their Please Please Me album during that session. And I say that is a bit deceptive. 4 of the songs from that album were already recorded and released as singles. And so they were going to be used as part of that. They recorded 10 songs. Well, 10 of the songs on that album were recorded this day. They actually also recorded Hold Me Tight, which wouldn't appear until the next episode. This session lasted nearly 13 hours over 3 segments. Only the first 2 segments were even scheduled. And then they got on such a roll. They had a 10 hours worth of studio time booked because George Martin thought an hour per song would be fine. But things got away from them, and it just they ended up staying an extra few hours into the night. So takes 1 through 9 of I Saw Her Standing There were recorded between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. sometime in that time frame. Takes 10 through 12 were recorded between 2:30 and 6. And along the way, they also managed to record There's a Place, A Taste of Honey, Do You Want to Know a Secret, Misery, Hold Me Tight, Anna Go to Him, Boys, Baby It's You, and Twist and Shout. And the story of Twist and Shout is legendary. I look forward to covering that on a future episode. So that's February 11th. Song's done. They did 12 takes, and it's done. Including some overdubbing of the hand claps. Then fast forward February 25th, They edit the song, and this is all without the Beatles being there. They're not a part of the editing and mixing phase at this point. George Martin and his team are doing it alone. They do an edit of takes 9 and 12, and then that edit is mixed down for mono and stereo. And you'll notice there's a hard pan on the stereo mix. And George Martin has talked about this previously, where he never intended these stereo mixes to be released. The reason he did them was he recorded the stereo with this huge spread, drums all the way in the left track, guitars all the way on the right side, and then vocals kind of in the middle. And he did this so that when they mixed down to mono from that, there was this space and the vocals don't get buried in the mix. So he purposely mixed this on a wide spectrum, on a wide drastic spectrum, so that it would translate well in mono. And that's partially why their mono recordings sound so great. Even by today's standards of, everything's in stereo and meticulously mixed, those mono recordings for being 1963, 64, they sound fantastic. And that's why, because they were using 2-track tapes and doing stereo mixes with hard pans. And then that's it. Song's done, comes out a couple months later. Actually, a month later. They did the mix on the February 25th. It comes out March 22nd. Paul has talked about the bass line to this tune. Great bass line. He stole it, lifted it, borrowed it, paid homage to it from Chuck Berry's song, I'm Talking About You, although Chuck's song is a little bit slower. Here's the thing about I Saw Her Standing There, though. It's not a crazy fast song. Everybody would think, it's not a slow song, but a lot of people, when they cover it, it's, well, she was just 17, and you know what I mean. It's not really that fast, but he's doing that bass line. What is it? Whoops. Solid eighth notes the whole time. It's a cool bass line. I'm not real sure how he does it when he's singing. An incredible talent there. John's kind of doubling it and harmonizing it a little bit on his guitar, where he's going. So he's hitting that harmony there of like an inverted power chord with B on the bottom, E on the top. And then you've got George playing these lead lines up here. 1. And that's a great dissonant E7 chord, that just cuts right through the rest of the song. It's good stuff. The structure of the song is almost as close to a blues as we get from the band. It follows some basic blues change, like chords, E7 to A7, back to E7, B7. But it's not a blues in the slightest. But like I said, we talked about this, I think, on the For You Blues episode. The Beatles never really did straight up 12-bar songs. It was very rare. And even this one that is obviously inspired by that form is not remotely a 12-bar blues. Then we get to the chorus where they do the E7. Then a E7 with the G sharp in the bass. So it's just still a chord tone, but it's a cool pull up to the A7. And then a C chord. We've talked about this before too. This is a flat 6. So a 6 in the key of E would be a C sharp minor. They lower that, make it a C chord and a major chord. And this is a quintessential Beatles sound. Then the bridge goes up to A, and Paul's still doing that, that bass line underneath it. It's just enough rock and roll, just enough catchy guitar hooks, good guitar solo by George. It's I Saw Her Standing There. John played it live with Elton John at the Madison Square Garden concert. It was the B-side to Philadelphia Freedom. And he introduced it on stage as they were going to play a song by his old estranged fiance or something to that effect. McCartney has played it on a ton of tours. And George and Ringo played it at the rock and roll induction ceremony for the Beatles alongside like Springsteen and Bob Dylan, and I forget who else was in the band, but an all-star band. So every Beatle has performed this song live post-Beatle, which is kind of cool, and I can't think of another song that would be true of. So that's I Saw Her Standing There. Great piece of just early 60s rock and roll. There's a famous story that the original lyric was she was just 17 and no beauty queen. And John came in and said, no, change it to You Know What I Mean. And Paul has written that story to be the end all be all of John's genius for 60 years now. It is a better line, and it does kind of give it a more dangerous edge, especially by 1963 standards. But I think the song would have been fine had they kept it like that as well. And I don't know if I mentioned this, the original working title of the song was 17, which is crazy because it's one lyric in the song. It's the first lyric, but the hook is I Saw Her Standing There, or I'd Never Dance With Another. There's like 6 other titles I'd give it before 17, but they made the right choice by changing it. All right, so that's I Saw Her Standing There. I will talk to you tomorrow. Don't forget to share this podcast all over social media and tag @HeroHabit, one word, on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And you can follow us and then swing by HeroHabit.com and check out our other articles and things related to the podcast. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day. This podcast is presented by the Hero Habit Podcast Network. Swing by HeroHabit.com today to comment on this episode and poke around our growing database of sports and pop culture news, reviews, and collectibles. HeroHabit.com. Collect your heroes.